Ernest Shackleton's Endurance was one of the most famous missing ships on Earth, not because it carried treasure, but because it carried one of the greatest survival stories in exploration history. In 1914, Shackleton and his men sailed south with a plan so bold it almost sounds unreal. Cross Antarctica on foot from one side to the other. They never even reached the starting line. Their ship became trapped in the Weddell Sea, squeezed by pack ice, and finally dragged beneath the surface in 1915. For more than a century, Endurance sat somewhere in the darkness, nearly 10,000 feet down, while historians, sailors, and polar dreamers wondered if it would ever be seen again. Then, in 2022, a modern expedition sent robotic search vehicles under the Antarctic ice and found the wreck in stunning condition. Before we start, tell us in the comments whether you think Shackleton's survival journey or the ship's rediscovery is the more unbelievable story. Today, we're looking at how Shackleton's lost ship was found after 107 years under Antarctic ice. The dream that froze.
Shackleton was convinced the greatest Antarctic journey was yet to be done, crossing the Antarctic continent from one side to the other. So he dragged his men on a doomed quest.
Shackleton was already a famous polar explorer when he launched the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. His goal was not simply to visit Antarctica, he wanted to cross the entire continent, passing through the South Pole and emerging on the other side. The ship chosen for the journey was Endurance, a strong wooden vessel built for polar waters. It was not a battleship, and it was not enormous, but it was sturdy, elegant, and made for dangerous seas. Its name would soon feel almost painfully fitting. Shackleton and 27 men sailed into the Weddell Sea, one of the harshest stretches of water on the planet. The area is known for thick pack ice that can move, squeeze, open, close, and crush without warning. By early 1915, Endurance was trapped. The crew could not sail forward. They could not simply back out. They were stuck in a frozen world that moved on its own schedule. For months, the ship drifted with the ice. At first, there was still hope. The men lived aboard, cared for the dogs, kept routines, and waited for the ice to release them. Instead, the ice tightened. The ship goes down. As the pressure grew, Endurance began to groan and twist. The ice pressed against the hull with a force no wooden ship could survive forever. Eventually, water began to pour in. Shackleton ordered the men off the ship. They hauled supplies onto the ice, along with lifeboats, sledging equipment, food, and anything else that might keep them alive. It was the moment the expedition stopped being a mission of discovery and became a fight for survival. On November 21st, 1915, Endurance finally sank beneath the Weddell Sea. Captain Frank Worsley recorded the ship's last known position, a detail that would become extremely important more than a century later. The men were now stranded on drifting ice with no radio, no rescue ship nearby, and no easy way home. Antarctica had taken their vessel, but it had not taken their will to live. Shackleton's leadership became the center of the story. He kept his men focused, moving, and hopeful. They camped on the ice, then took to the lifeboats, eventually reaching Elephant Island after a brutal journey across freezing water. The long way home.
They'd done this epic boat journey and survived that, and then they have to do an epic mountain crossing as well because the whaling station was on the other side, all the time knowing that if they failed, no news would ever come out and the whole party of 28 would probably die.
Elephant Island was land, but it was not safety. It was remote, cold, and far from shipping routes. The men could not expect someone to casually pass by and find them. Shackleton made a desperate choice. He and a small crew would take the James Caird, one of the lifeboats, and sail about 800 miles to South Georgia, where they could try to find help. That voyage remains almost hard to believe. The boat was tiny compared with the Southern Ocean around it. Freezing spray coated everything. Waves towered over the men. Navigation depended on brief glimpses of sky and Worsley's skill. They reached South Georgia, but even then, the ordeal was not over. Shackleton and two others had to cross the island's mountains and glaciers on foot to reach a whaling station. After several failed rescue attempts, Shackleton finally returned to Elephant Island in August 1916. Every man left behind was still alive. He had lost endurance, failed to cross Antarctica, and still pulled off one of the most remarkable rescues ever recorded. The search begins again.
An exploration crew organized by the Falklands Maritime Heritage Trust went back to the icy Weddell Sea, where Shackleton's ship first went down. Using the last known coordinates recorded by the Endurance crew, they deployed underwater drones to search the seabed. After about 2 weeks of searching in very difficult conditions, they found the wreck.
For decades, the wreck remained out of reach. Everyone knew roughly where Endurance had gone down because Worsley had recorded the position. But roughly means something very different in the Weddell Sea. The search area was remote, frozen, and dangerous. Sea ice could trap modern ships just as it had trapped Endurance. The cold, depth, and distance made the wreck one of the hardest targets in maritime archaeology. A serious attempt in 2019 did not locate the ship. That failure showed how unforgiving the search would be. Even with modern equipment, the Weddell Sea was still the Weddell Sea. Then came the Endurance 22 expedition. The team sailed aboard the South African polar research vessel S.A. Agulhas II and used advanced underwater vehicles to scan the seabed. These robotic vehicles could travel deep below the surface, searching through darkness where no diver could go. The team worked in shifts, covering a huge search box and racing against weather, ice, time, and battery limits. The moment on the screen.
This was Endurance back in January of 1915, a sturdy, three-masted ship that had carried British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton and his crew of 27 to the coast of Antarctica. Shackleton's plan was to land and then cross the entire continent, which would have been a first. But the Endurance got stuck off the coast, trapped by the massive halo of sea ice that grows around Antarctica every year. The ice seized the ship, and despite the crew's best efforts, never let her go.
By March 5, 2022, the team had searched much of the area and still had not found the wreck. The pressure was rising. This was the kind of mission where even a tiny mistake, a bad weather shift, or a failed vehicle could end the search. Then, sonar picked up something large. The underwater vehicle turned back for a closer look. As the image sharpened, the shape of a ship began to appear. Soon the team saw the impossible. Endurance, sitting upright on the seabed. The name was still visible across the stern. Parts of the ship looked so well preserved, it seemed less like a wreck and more like a ghost vessel waiting in the dark. The preservation stunned experts. The freezing water, lack of light, and absence of wood-eating organisms had helped protect the ship. Its railings, wheel, hull, and deck features were still recognizable. Nothing was removed. The site is protected under the Antarctic Treaty System, so the wreck was surveyed and filmed, not disturbed. After 107 years, Endurance was found, but it was left where it had rested since Shackleton's day. Why the discovery stunned the world.
Whenever I'm out there in a tricky situation, climbing, or where things might not be going my way, I take a bit of Shackleton and I plug it in and I'm like, yeah, Sir Ernest Shackleton, he would persevere.
The discovery mattered because Endurance was more than an old ship. It was the missing centerpiece of a survival story that had already become legendary. For generations, people knew Shackleton's story through photographs, diaries, and accounts of the crew's escape. The sinking of Endurance had always been central to that story, but the ship itself was gone. Seeing it again changed the way people imagined the expedition. The wreck connected the modern world directly to the men who had stood on the ice in 1915 and watched their ship disappear. It also showed how powerful modern exploration has become. Shackleton's men faced the Antarctic with wooden boats, wool clothing, sledges, and courage. The 2022 searchers arrived with satellites, icebreakers, sonar, and robotic underwater vehicles. Now it's time to hear from you. Which part of the Endurance story amazes you more? Shackleton saving every member of his crew, or the modern explorers finding the ship nearly 10,000 feet beneath the Antarctic waters? Let us know in the comments section below.